I work the night shift at a small gas station off a lonely highway. It's the kind of place that barely gets any customers past midnight, just the occasional trucker or drunk looking for snacks. Most nights it's boring, just me, the hum of the refrigerators, and the buzz of the neon sign outside. But one night, something happened that still makes my skin crawl. It was just past 2 a.m. when I heard the rumble of a truck pulling into the lot. I glanced at the security monitor and saw an old delivery truck, the kind you'd expect to see dropping off supplies to grocery stores. But that didn't make sense. Our shipments came during the day, and we weren't expecting one until next week. I watched as a man stepped out of the truck. He was tall, wearing a cap low over his face and a heavy jacket despite the warm night. He walked up to the glass doors and peered inside before pushing them open. "You the manager?" he asked. I shook my head. "Just the night clerk." He nodded and pulled a clipboard from under his arm. "Got a delivery for you." I frowned. "We're not supposed to get any deliveries tonight." "Manifest says otherwise," he said, tapping the clipboard. I glanced at it, but something was off. The paper was old, crinkled, and stained. The handwriting wasn't printed like a normal shipping manifest. It was scribbled in shaky letters. The only thing listed was one crate. No supplier name, no company logo, just those two words. I was about to tell him to take it back when he turned and started walking toward his truck. "Just sign for it," he called over his shoulder. Before I could argue, he was already climbing into the cab. The truck's engine roared to life, and within seconds he was gone, disappearing into the night like he had never been there at all. I stepped outside and looked down at the crate. It was about the size of a mini fridge made of thick, dark wood. No labels, no markings, just a single old-fashioned padlock on the front. I had a bad feeling about it. I brought it inside, setting it down behind the counter. The whole thing felt wrong. Who sends an unmarked crate in the middle of the night with no paperwork? I tried calling my manager, but he didn't pick up. I considered leaving it alone, but my curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a pair of bolt cutters from the back room and snapped the padlock off. The lock fell to the floor with a dull clank. I hesitated, then slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a monitor. Just an old, boxy CRT monitor. It was turned on, showing nothing but static. There were no cables, no power source, just the screen, flickering like an old TV stuck between channels. I stared at it, confused. How was it even working? Then, the static changed. It flickered, then distorted, and suddenly I was looking at a live feed of my gas station. The camera angle was strange, like a security camera, but I had never seen one from that perspective before. It showed me, standing behind the counter, staring down at the monitor. My stomach dropped. This thing was broadcasting a live feed of me. I looked around, trying to spot a hidden camera, but the angles didn't match any of the security feeds we had in the store. It was like this monitor had its own camera, watching me from somewhere I couldn't see. I reached out and tapped the screen. The image flickered. Then I saw something move. At first, I thought it was a glitch. A shadowy figure appeared at the edge of the screen, standing just outside the glass doors of the station. But here's the thing. I turned around immediately, and there was no one there. I snapped my head back to the screen. The figure was still there, standing perfectly still outside. It was tall, featureless, more of a silhouette than a person. I felt a cold chill creep up my spine. Slowly in the monitor's feed, the figure took a step forward. I turned around again. The lot was empty. The security cameras showed nothing. But when I looked back at the monitor, the figure was inside the store, standing right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly tripped. There was no one there, just empty space. But in the monitor, the figure was still standing behind me. I slammed the crate shut, heart pounding. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and called the police. But as soon as I hit dial, the power went out. Everything, lights, security cameras, even the refrigerators, shut down at once, plunging the store into darkness. The only light came from the flickering screen of that goddamn monitor. And on the screen, the figure turned its head, not fast, not suddenly, just a slow, unnatural tilt, like it knew I was watching. Then the screen cut to static. I grabbed my flashlight from under the counter and ran to the circuit breaker in the back. My hands were slick with sweat as I flipped the switches. After a few seconds, the power came back on. The gas station was empty. The monitor was gone. When the cops finally arrived, I told them about the weird delivery, the monitor, the figure. They looked at me like I was crazy. The security footage showed nothing out of the ordinary. No truck, no delivery guy, no crate. The footage of me opening the box, it just showed me staring at an empty counter. The crate was gone, but I know what I saw. The next night I quit. Walked out and never went back. But sometimes late at night, when I pass by that gas station on the highway, I swear I can still see a flickering light inside, like a monitor, watching. I work the night shift as a nurse in a small hospital. It's the kind of job that feels lonely at times. The halls are empty, the patients are asleep, and the only sounds are the soft beeping of monitors and the occasional distant cough. It's monotonous, predictable. But one night, something happened that I can't explain. Something that still haunts me. It was a slow night just past 2 a.m., and I was sitting at the nurse's station, filling out paperwork. The kind of boring routine stuff that makes your eyelids heavy. That's when I heard it, the sharp ding of a call button. I looked up at the screen to see which patient had pressed it. Room 85. I frowned. That wasn't possible. Room 85 had been empty since the night before, when its last occupant, an elderly man named Mr. Davison, had passed away in his sleep. I had been on duty when it happened. He had no visitors, no family, just an old man who drifted away quietly in the middle of the night. The room had already been cleaned, the bed stripped, and there were no new patients assigned to it. I assumed it was just a system glitch. It happens sometimes. Equipment malfunctions, call buttons misfire, so I ignored it. But then a few minutes later, ding, again. Room 85. I let out a frustrated sigh, grabbed my tablet, and decided to check it out. The hallway was eerily silent as I walked toward the room. The overhead lights flickered faintly, and my footsteps echoed against the polished floors. When I reached the door, I hesitated before pushing it open. Inside, everything looked normal. The bed was neatly made, the heart monitor was off, and the room smelled faintly of disinfectant. But something felt off. The air was heavy, charged, as if the room itself was waiting for something. I walked in and checked the call button panel by the bed. It wasn't stuck, and there was no sign that it had been pressed. Everything was normal. But just as I turned to leave, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The bed had an indentation, as if someone had just been lying there. A cold chill ran down my spine. I knew that bed had been empty all night. There was no way someone had been in it. I backed out of the room quickly, trying to shake off the feeling. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was imagining things. But 5 minutes later, ding. I looked up. Room 85. At this point, my heart was pounding. I wasn't the only nurse on duty, so I called over my coworker, Sarah, and told her what was happening. She gave me a skeptical look, but agreed to check it out with me. We walked down the hall together, and as we got closer to the room, I felt it again. That suffocating heaviness. Sarah pushed the door open, and just like before, the room was empty. The bed still had that same indentation, but this time there was something else. The bathroom door was slightly open. Neither of us had touched it. We exchanged uneasy glances before Sarah, trying to be rational, stepped forward and pushed the door open all the way. The bathroom was empty, but the mirror was fogged up, as if someone had just taken a hot shower. Sarah turned to me, her face pale. "Did someone come in here?" she whispered. I shook my head. No one. Then we both noticed it at the same time. The call button. It was pressed down. Sarah bolted out of the room before I even had time to react. I wasn't far behind. We ran back to the nurse's station, out of breath, and checked the security cameras. The footage showed both of us entering the room just minutes ago. But before that, nothing. The door never opened. No one had gone inside, but the call button had been pressed. Neither of us went back to room 85 for the rest of the shift. The next morning, we told the day shift nurses what had happened. One of the older nurses, Gloria, listened quietly, then let out a long sigh. "You're not the first to notice that room," she said. "Mr. Davison, he was alone when he passed. No family, no one to say goodbye. Some nurses think he's still waiting for someone to come check on him." That should have been the end of it. A creepy story to tell during slow nights. But things only got worse after that. The next night I was back on shift. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just a weird coincidence. A system glitch. That's all. But then at exactly 2:15 a.m., ding, room 85. I refused to check it alone this time. I convinced one of the security guards, Mark, to come with me. He was a big guy, ex-military, the type who wasn't afraid of anything. When we reached the door, he knocked twice. "Hospital security," he called out. No response. He pushed the door open. The first thing I noticed was the smell. The room had been cleaned the night before, but now there was a faint scent of something rotting. Mark smelled it too. He covered his nose and stepped inside. That's when we heard it. A soft creaking sound. The bathroom door was slowly swinging open. But it wasn't just the door moving. The bed, the one that had been empty the night before, was now occupied. The sheets were pulled up, covering a shape. A human shape. Mark yanked the sheets down. Nothing. The bed was empty. But when we looked up at the mirror, there was a message written in the fog. "I'm still here." We ran out of there so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. I put in a request the next morning. Room 85 was to remain empty indefinitely. No new patients. No one goes inside. It's been weeks now, and I still refuse to walk past that room alone. Sometimes during my shift, I swear I hear the faint ding of a call button in the distance. But when I check the screen, room 85 doesn't even exist anymore. And that wraps up today's story. I really hope it resonated with you or gave you something to think about. Stories like these are what keep me passionate about creating, and your support makes it all worthwhile. If you've got any thoughts, opinions, or even your own experiences to share, don't hold back. Drop them in the comments. I'd love to start a conversation and hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, make sure you stick around. I've got plenty more coming that I think you'll love. Thanks so much for watching, for being here, and for supporting this journey. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.